like to call it a poltergasm.
What are you doing?
I just drew a trademark sign with my finger, child, because I've registered the word poltergasm.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of For What It's Worth. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. And originally, this episode was going to be about copyright and the concept of intellectual property in general. However, the topic became both too much and too little to talk about at once. Let me explain. It became too much because going through every single form of copyright law would take roughly 5 evers.
That's even longer than 4 ever.
And would involve millions of new examples I'd have to look into. It just became too much. It became too little, however, because the only real topic I wanted to address was trademark law and some other aspects of general copyright law. Trademark law is a very specific part of intellectual property, and the part that has the most issues. Basically, as I understand it, and keep in mind, I'm not a lawyer, so if an actual lawyer contradicts what I'm saying, they're almost certainly right. Trademark law is the copyright version of ideas that are put into projects. I should also note that although copyright and trademark are legally distinct, I'm using copyright as a sort of category and trademark as a subcategory. That's not a legal thing. That's just something I'm doing to make this sound more coherent. Copyright is literally just the right to make copies, and trademarks are literally just marks of trade. I'm just using copyright because that's a term that's kind of associated with all sort of forms of intellectual property, and as such, it kind of gets lumped in with everything, despite the fact it really shouldn't be. Hey, I am a victim of failed words, if you will, just as much as anyone else, and breaking that dialect is hard. Anyway, back to what I'm saying. Essentially, an episode of Futurama can be copyrighted. However, Futurama itself is trademarked. A trademark is essentially something typically associated with the company or person that made the product. For example, a cover of a DVD for a film made popular by the evil empire, the evil empire, looking too similar to your DVD cover, even if the story in question is in public domain, could result in a lawsuit from that frickin' mouse.
You want a piece of me? I will see you in court. I'm gonna sue your sorry little...
In fact, Disney even sued Good Times Entertainment at one point over their covers looking too similar to theirs and fooling customers. This resulted in Good Times having to clearly mark their versions of these films.
The major difference is that trademark law is much more restrictive than general copyright law. For example, trademark law has no equivalent to fair use. So, while creating a review of a Pokemon game is legal under fair use law, the same is not true of me creating my own Pokemon game with pre-established characters owned by Nintendo. That can be ceased and desist. Instead of fair use, trademark violation cases are decided by how similar the work is to another work. The legal test is, and I did not make this up, this is the actual term, whether or not a moron in a hurry could mistake the product for the official work. Now, that's not the weirdest legal term, that still goes to Twinkie defense, which didn't even have anything to do with Twinkies, but you aren't ready for that conversation. First off, I should note what trademark and similar law means somebody owns. When you get down to it, what is a character? Regardless of media, regardless of context, a character at the end of the day is an idea. While all forms of copyright can be accused of owning an idea, trademark law is where it's the most obvious. For example, DC owns the Joker, and if I want to put him in my product, I must get their permission first, regardless of context. Again, in spite of the Joker being nothing more than an idea, they managed to jot down first. The man who wants to make a film where the Joker tells us we live in a society...
Hi, Ephraim here in post. I just want to say,
I didn't realize that there wasn't actually a clip in Joker where he says we live in a society because I hadn't seen it, and there might be. I don't know. I still haven't seen it, but I couldn't find it on YouTube. I could, however, find this guy putting cartoon sound effects over a scene from Joker. So just watch. Oh, and there's Alex Jones as the Joker as well.
Oh, yes! That's what's so funny about it all.
Has to get permission from the same men who made him surf just half a century earlier.
Joker's good.
For that matter, can we talk about the oddity of what is and isn't allowed? Here's a story I know a lot of you remember. In 2016, Nintendo sent a DMCA takedown to websites hosting the fan game Another Metroid 2 remake, which at the time was also the only Metroid 2 remake, now that I think about it, or at least the only one that got any mainstream traction. Really weird to call it Another Metroid 2 remake, which, because the game contained trademarked characters, that being Samus Aran and the entire Metroid series, they were legally allowed to do. However, they are unable to take down the thousands of Let's Players, long plays, reviews, and other videos talking about the original game, Metroid 2 The Return of Samus. This is in spite of the fact that AM2R had been in development for 5 years. Seriously, the first demo was released in 2011. While your average video on the topic takes, what, 5 weeks at most? Now, this is not me saying that these videos should have been taken down. This is me saying the standard makes no sense. The point of copyright, I thought, was to encourage more creative work. That's the argument, right? Without IP in general, the industry would stagnate and less people would make creative work.
Also, copyright law can help prevent creative stagnation. You think it's boring right now that every damn movie is a remake or a reboot, and even the new ones have to start out as YA novels from 2 years ago or comic books from the 60s? Imagine how bad things would be if everyone had the right to make crappy Spider-Man movies instead of just Sony.
Now, I like Some Call Me Johnny, but I would never call his review of Metroid 2,
And of course, the Screw Attack. Screw Attack! Would you cut that?
more creative than a ground-up remake. If only because such a comparison doesn't even make any sense. I should also ask, who do you think owns these ideas? The people who make the show? Because if that were the case, then maybe such a thing would be understandable. Nope. Instead, it's the massive companies who then use it to screw over creators. One example of this is Mr. Warburton, creator of the cartoon codenamed Kids Next Door. For years, Warburton tried to create a spin-off of the series, one of the most beloved by those who watched it, called Galactic Kids Next Door. Despite making one of the most popular shows on Cartoon Network, and later getting a petition for the series to break 100,000 signatures, Cartoon Network still said no. Hi, Ephrom, I'm post here. Again, this time for a real reason, not just for a gag. I wanted to real quick say, yes, I know, it's not over 100,000, it was 91,000. Still really impressive, though. Better than any petition you've got, probably. But what I actually wanted to mention is that there is a petition, link in the description of this, first link in the description, in fact, to a still active petition that even got signatures the day I got these screenshots, which is Sunday, August 1st, 2020. So go sign that, and while you're at it, leave a little comment, saying that it's sad this even had to happen and calling for the abolition of trademark law. Okay? Okay, back to your regularly scheduled program. Why can't Warburton make the show using his creations? Because Cartoon Network owns the trademark to Kids Next Door. How about Amy Winfrey, the creator of the Nickelodeon show Making Fiends? Her show started off as a web series before being picked up by Nick in 2004 to be turned into a cartoon. 4 years later, 18 segments spread out over 7 episodes aired between October 8th and November 1st, 2008. Now, again, Winfrey cannot do anything with something she made, despite the fact Nickelodeon is not selling it in any way. Oh yeah, I forget to mention that A&D has had some DVDs here and there, sure, but nothing in the form of a box set. In fact, only about 30 episodes of the 81 episodes, specials included, have been released on DVD. Sure, years later, you were able to purchase them off the PlayStation Store or watch them on Netflix. However, that wasn't until, again, years later. For the vast majority of time, Galactic Kids Next Door has been rejected and Kids Next Door has been canceled. Again, Cartoon Network was not really making any noticeable amount of money off of the Kids Next Door name. But they still owned it, because what else would you expect? Not even the two movies, Operation Zero and Operation Interview, have seen a home media release. As for Making Fiends, that show is in full keep circulating the tape mode. No home release has ever been made, despite the fact the show was the highest rated show on Nicktoons at the time. They are doing jack shit with it. However, the people who actually created the product that brought them the revenue is not allowed to use their own creations. I must ask, what kind of sense does that make? Look, I planned when I started writing this script to just meme about 1984 rock opera starring David Bowie or something. However, this goes beyond funny memes about what you would find on TV tropes What Could Have Been page. This is a serious issue of creators getting screwed over while companies do nothing. That's another thing. I could understand if these companies were using these characters. Okay, Cartoon Network wants to reboot the Powerpuff Girls without the permission or even knowledge of Craig McCracken. Fine. That shouldn't be fine, but fine. I don't care anymore. However, when they refuse to do anything with what they purchased while the creators would love to do more, that honestly pisses me off. As it should any person who has any sense of justice in this world. And I should end by noting much of our most famous work would not exist today with the current standards. In around 1598, William Shakespeare's famous work Romeo and Juliet first premiered. This work was based in large part off of a poem called The Tragic History of Romeus and Juliet, which was published in English in 1562. Around the same time, Hamlet premiered, this time in 1600, about 1600. The main source for this is believed to be a lost play called Your Hamlet, which premiered in 1589. For context, that's like if I made a film based off another film from 2009 today. Do you think anyone would allow that? No. I'd get my ass sued. There is no way around this. The idea of trademark law has been a disaster for creators.